Jon Brzenk is no stranger to pulling in very ugly matches. He doesn't get caught off guard by his opponent pulling from an awkward position, and he himself will pull from an awkward position if necessary. This has led to us seeing some pretty unorthodox technique from Jon Brzenk matches from time to time, but it's normally caused by Jon's opponent. In this video, we will take a look at what has got to be the most disgusting technique I have ever seen in a Jon Brzenk match. Technique that is so gross, it just has to be excruciatingly painful. But first, let's look at some honorable mentions. If you think about an ugly Jon Brzenk match, you might think about Jon versus Michael Todd at UAL. This is the match in which Jon delivers the classic line, "Where you going, buddy?" Michael is in the full-blown King's move, and Jon is just sitting there holding him in center. Eventually, Jon sweeps to the side and is unable to pin, but he transitions to a flop press and gets the win.
Where you going, buddy? Get his arm up on him. Arm stop.
We did see some pretty ugly technique in this match from Michael Todd, but this is nowhere near the ugliest. Another very ugly Jon Brzenk match is against Jerry Caderet back in the day. In this match, Jerry of course goes with his ace move, the flop press. Jerry continues to slip lower and lower on the hand of Jon Brzenk. Jon becomes slowly more separated while also committing his shoulder more. But then Jerry does something crazy. He starts top rolling. But it's not a good top roll, it's a crazy bent wrist Todd roll looking thing. This move is obviously not Jerry's main move, but because he's gassed Jon out quite a bit, and because Jon wasn't defending against this move initially, it somehow works. Jerry Caderet ends up Todd rolling Jon in this match.
Wow, look at this match! Jerry's got position, but Jon is holding on strong! Jerry go down!
Pretty gross, but this still isn't the ugliest technique in a Jon Brzenk match. By the way, random side note, comment below if this was a pin or not.
Jerry is notoriously hard to pin when he gets in that position, but Jon Brzenk's endurance is
In the honorable mentions, we looked at a King's move and a flop press. What could possibly be worse? How about a King's move and a flop press in the same round? That's exactly what we get to see in this next match. It's important to explain the backstory because this may have contributed to the causation of this crazy technique. We see Jon Brzenk arm wrestling a bunch of random people. What's going on here? This video is from March 10th, 2013 at the FitX Sports and Fitness Expo in Melbourne. This was a promotional event that FitX set up. The idea is that anyone can try their luck against the greatest arm wrestler in history. If they succeed in this endeavor, they are awarded $1,000 cash. Of course, this is a good amount of motivation for most people, but it's not enough motivation for these random people to make up the strength gap between them and Jon Brzenk. But then, Mata Warangi Hedemorris steps up to the plate. This is where things could get a little tricky for Jon. Mate has had matches with Levon in the past and is no joke. On top of that, Jon has got to be pretty tired at this point from pulling everyone under the sun. Nonetheless, he blasts through him with not much effort, but Mata Warangi was only a warm-up. The true challenger came up right after him, and his name is Lars Rybakhin. Lars has competed in both strongman and arm wrestling, he's an insanely strong human being in general, and the dude literally trains in a cave. Like an actual cave. Which is probably one of the coolest things I've ever heard. This is where things get really interesting for Jon. Jon is already tired since he's been pulling a ton of people back to back. Lars is incredibly motivated since he has a shot at pinning Jon Brzenk and gets $1,000 if he does so. And like I said earlier, he literally trains in a cave. Off the go of the match, we see Lars hit his classic flop press, which is probably his best move, although he isn't limited to it. He slips underneath and we go to straps. And this is where things get disgusting. Once again, Lars jams in with his shoulder, and Lars' technique isn't that ugly yet. But just you wait. Jon slowly climbs and readjusts up over the top of Lars' press. We see Lars' hand gradually slide lower and lower on Jon's arm until Lars just barely has any connection with his fingertips. We see John surge for a pin, and then Lars does it. He rolls out into a King's move from that already terrible position. If you guys have ever King's moved before, you know that the amount of torque on Lars' wrist right now is absolutely insane. This has got to hurt really, really bad. But don't worry, we're still not done, because John climbs even higher, and then Lars King's moves again, this time from an even worse position. The amount of twisting, torquing pressure trying to spin Lars' wrist out is so incredibly high right now. Lars holds for a few seconds, but eventually John stands up and presses him. But we're still not done, because there's another angle of this match that somehow looks even worse for Lars' wrist. On this secondary angle, we can really start to see how spun out Lars' wrist is getting. The anchor of the King's move is pronation, but there is a super sketchy technique you can use if you are just a little bit crazy. In a traditional King's move, if you totally lose all your muscular pronation, you should just allow the pin to happen to be safe. But you could technically just rotate your shoulder and entire body, forcing pronation to occur through a bone lock instead of through musculature, and just hoping that your wrist doesn't snap in half in the process. In this match, Lars chooses to go with the latter. Maybe the feeling in his wrist is already gone from years of flop pressing and he just doesn't care, but this move right here would probably injure the wrist of 99% of arm wrestlers. I don't know if there's any other King's mover who would be willing to pull from this position. Even Michael Todd's King's move doesn't look nearly this painful. Notice how Michael normally keeps his wrist pretty straight and maintains pronation as well. Michael also gets a pretty deep grip, meaning that the torquing pressure applied on his wrist is very close to his wrist. The closer the pressure is to the wrist, the safer the move is. But the further away the pressure is from the wrist, the more that pressure will be multiplied. In other words, a deep grip King's move is kinda safe-ish, and a shallow grip King's move is super dangerous. Although people might hate this move from Michael, it's probably not all that dangerous for his wrist compared to Lars. Lars' King's move does not look like Michael's. The reason for this is that Lars opened the match in a flop press. After this, John climbed way higher than when he started. John removed the depth of Lars' grip. Now, Lars has a very, very shallow grip, exponentially increasing the torque applied on his wrist joint while King's moving. And there you have it, perhaps the ugliest technique we've ever seen in a John Brzenk match. And what's crazier is it looked like it almost worked a little bit. But it's also possible that John was concerned about injuring his opponent, so he was going slow on purpose, but he could have pinned him at any moment he wanted to. Let me know if you guys can think of an uglier John Brzenk match than John versus Lars. There's a metric ton of John Brzenk matches on the internet, and I definitely have not seen all of them. Although I would never recommend Lars' technique, I have to commend him for his will to win. Lars demonstrated the heart of a champion, refusing to give up regardless of pain level. Or maybe he just wanted some money.